Hey everybody, it's Ben. Go Ben. Sorry Karen's not streaming right now and it's me. Truth hurts. It's me. Truth hurts. Okay. That looks right. Sorry, you have to do a lot of stuff to start the stream. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot of stuff. Okay. Hey, Pat. Hi, Falcon and Amsterdam, Ben, and so forth. Okay, so this is YouTube. No, that's not YouTube. That's YouTube. Okay. Then let me make sure it's on the right thing. Okay, that fixed that, I think. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I have to put YouTube and Twitch on two different computers. I mean, I don't have to, but okay. Hopefully, you guys have been watching Karen stream poker the last few days. She had like a 6-hour stream today, and yesterday she streamed for about 10 hours, I guess, or 9. And so on. So I took some of my favorite games from the first 3 rounds of the Olympiad, which is ongoing. They're playing in Budapest in Hungary, so they're all asleep now, except for the ones who party all night, which is all of them. And then we'll look at some of the most interesting games or positions or whatever I feel like looking at. Get rid of all this nonsense. Okay, nonsense has been getting rid of. How good is Karen at poker? Well, they don't have ratings in poker, so everybody thinks they're the best. So she's the best. Ivanchuk did lose, but his team won. Also, when somebody in their 50s loses at the Olympiad, that's not something that's surprising. In fact, if anybody loses to anybody in the Olympiad, it's not surprising. If anybody loses at chess to anyone, it's not surprising. Anyway, I'm charging my phone, so that's good. Karen's gonna not stream poker tomorrow, but she is gonna stream on Sunday for many hours. And so forth. I don't know if you guys are following the Olympiad. The teams that usually win all of their matches have done so. There's a couple of exceptions. Germany lost to Lithuania, which was an upset. And France lost to like Montenegro or something. I forgot who France lost to, but a team that they should beat. Also, Yeah, and Italy beat the Netherlands. That was also an upset. Also, nobody's talked about this at all, but I don't know why. I don't know why Fallujah is not playing in the Olympiad. And I haven't seen anybody mention it. Maybe that's my fault. But if Fallujah played for France, then France would have quite a good team because he'd be on board 1 and MVL would be on board 2 and Bakro would be on board 3. And they'd have 2 grandmasters you guys haven't heard of on board 4 and 5 who are like 2650. Then they'd have a chance to get some medals. They wouldn't be the favorite to get medals, but they'd have a chance. And then Fallujah's not playing, so they have no chance. What's funny is Nakamura's not playing, and the U.S. is still the highest rated team. Also, I don't know why Hikaru's not playing, but that's less surprising than Fallujah not playing to me. But maybe I'm wrong. Oh, what's against Montenegro? I don't even know where Montenegro is. I know it's in Europe. What's a big city in Montenegro I've heard of? Maybe it is a cigar brand. Maybe it is. In the Balkans, what else? Do you think Catalan is a good intermediate opening? I mean, the Catalan's mainly for top players because you won't get it very often. People won't be playing a lot of theory. Today in Trump news, he was talking in Arizona, and he made a couple of gaffes that I know of. One, he said, "You people in Pennsylvania go vote," but no, Arizona and Pennsylvania are pretty far from each other. But I guess momentarily he thought he was in Pennsylvania. But funnier than that was he said he's going to round up the migrants in Springfield, Ohio, and send them to Venezuela. So I guess that would confuse the Haitians going to Venezuela. So that was also funny. Enzian Hero. And yet people vote for him. I demand you acknowledge my long comment. Acknowledged. Thanks for the sub, Enzian Hero. You're the best. Can you tell us about the Olympiad's format? It's 4 board matches between teams. And then they play a match every day. I don't know what else you want to know. Slow chess. There's lots of rules I don't know. I was at one Olympiad in my life. That was in 1990 in Novi Sad, which at that time was in Yugoslavia. That country no longer exists, although Joe Pesci says Yugoslavia funny on Family Guy. I was the Belgian women's team captain. Belgian women actually did pretty well. Can any country send several teams? Well, it's not done by countries. It's done by members of FIDE, which typically are countries, but not necessarily. Uh, and then the host country can have more than one team, but yeah, not other teams. Yeah, then you can only send one team, and some FIDE federations don't send any teams because they don't have the money. It's the same in the women's Olympiad. Kramnik is, I think, the team captain for Uzbekistan, the reigning champions. Well, the tournaments in Hungary, so Hungary Federation is allowed more than one team. Yeah, I think Russia's not a member of FIDE currently, so they can't have a team. What do you think about MVL's recent longest drawing series? Well, that doesn't sound good. Do you agree with that? I agree with nothing. I can't find anything I agree with. I'm very disagreeable. I'm thinking of changing my persona to be more agreeable. Changing your persona is tough. It's easier to just do the same thing you've always done. Do you think the modern or Pierce is better? I mean, that's like saying, do you want to get shot by firing squad or do you want the electric chair? They're both terrible. USA won 4-0 versus Singapore, which I find ridiculous. Well, U.S. players are better than the players from Singapore. It's not Singa rich, it's Singapore. That's not a surprising result. Not sure why it's ridiculous. A lot of the matches, the first 2 or 3 rounds are 4-0. Then people start, teams start playing each other that have similar strength, and so on. Why did Levon almost lose to a 1900 rated opponent? Levon didn't play a 1900 player. Levon played a 2150 player in round one. Almost lost. Wouldn't say he almost lost. He was losing for about 6 moves. He played badly in the opening. That's actually the first game we're going to look at. Why do you think the Pierce is bad? Because it's bad. Do you think the same about the kid? Yes. Mamedyarov almost lost to a 1900. In chess, the rating system is based on your results. So if you win, you gain rating points. If you lose rating points. And if you draw, then it depends on the respective ratings of the players, on who gains or who loses, or if neither one does. So it's not surprising that during a game, anybody has a better, worse, or equal position against anybody else. What is surprising, and it doesn't happen very often, otherwise it wouldn't be surprising, is when the result of the game has a big upset. So if Levon or Mamedyarov or anybody else has a bad position against a low-rated player, that's not surprising. But if they end up losing the game, that is surprising because the ratings don't indicate that somebody like that would lose to somebody else. But it's a percentage anyway. So you would expect Aronian and Mamedyarov to score like 99 out of 100 against those people based on their rating difference. And that means occasionally they won't win. And that's why I beat Mamedyarov, because occasionally he won't beat me, but usually he will. Let's see, we have 109 people watching on Twitch, and we have 80 people watching on YouTube. I think Levon is a lot older than Mamedyarov, unless I'm wrong, then he's not. That depends on your definition of top level. Do you guys think Tua's going to play in the NFL again? I think it makes sense that he doesn't, because financially it doesn't matter for him. He's going to get between 90 million and 150 million, even if he doesn't play. That seems like enough to live on. But yeah, it seems like it's pretty dangerous for him to play. Like if he was related to me or I was his advisor, I would tell him not to play anymore. But usually athletes want to keep playing. They don't want to retire when they're 25, 26 years old. And Miami's not a good team anyway, so what's the point? In fact, I saw the neurologist today. Don't know much about neurology. Then I went to the lab and had blood drawn. And then I have more appointments and such. Yeah, my doctor, my PCP, she said that she saw me play chess on the internet and she recommended I see a neurologist. And I said, why? And she said, you play terrible. You used to be a good chess player. And tough doctor. I don't really hope that any team wins the Olympiad. I'm not really rooting for any team in particular. Yeah, the neurologist said, what medications do you take? And I said, all of them. So he just wrote down the medications I don't take. That saved time. And then he said I had a serious case of old. Man, I don't know if that's Karen or if that's trying to learn. We'll never know until they say something else. Go, Karen. Sounds like you're seeing a witch doctor. Okay, so I thought I'd talk about what I thought the key points were in some of the more interesting games in the Olympiad thus far in the first 3 rounds. First few games are from the American team because like 80% of our viewers are in America. Probably want to see them. Also, they're the highest rated team. But I don't think they have any chance for medals because they're too old. Typically, old teams don't win any medals. Our team's pretty old. But so far, so good for them. Okay, so this is Aronian has black in round 1 against the 2100. and so forth. Yay, we had 10 gifted memberships from Vorb de Souffet. I can't see what it says, but he gifted 10 memberships. And if I remember correctly, and I don't, he gifted 20 memberships last week. But I could be making that up, but I don't think I am. Thanks for the big donation. I'll have to drink a gallon of this water now because you donated so many subs or members or whatever it is. That had Karpov, Kasparov, Tal, and Geller won a lot. And they weren't young. That sounds made up. Okay, so when I play black in this position, I play e6. And in my chessable course, I recommend knight f6, and that's what Levon played. Yay, thanks, Clint Wilkinson, for $1.99. Yeah, the more you donate, the less you hang mate in one. And a lot of the chapter on this position in my course focuses on e5, knight d5. And I think against knight c3, I recommend e5 for black. And this was weird. So, in my opinion, Aronian did something that we're all guilty of. I don't know anybody who's not guilty of it. And what's funny is you know not to do it, then you do it anyway. And this happens in chess and poker and bridge and backgammon and football. In football, if you're a quarterback in the NFL, you slide so that you don't get hurt. And you know that. Like if you're a quarterback in the NFL, you know that better than I do. And yet some people don't slide and then they never play football again. So people do stuff that's wrong and they know it's wrong. Like some people vote for Trump and obviously they know that that's wrong, but they want to do something wrong. So it makes them feel better about themselves to do something you're not supposed to do. So in this position, Levon makes a mistake. And the reason he made the mistakes in this game that he did weren't due to his misunderstanding of chess and not being a strong player. There's two reasons why Levon made mistakes this game. One is Levon played way too quickly, which he does. And second, Levon thought, like, my opponent's FIDE rating is 600 points lower than mine, so the game won't be competitive. And because he thought those two things, playing too fast isn't thinking, but because he did those two things, he got a lost position pretty quickly. And I think if Levon was playing somebody his own rating, he would have played slower and better. Now, the one person I know who I can definitively say doesn't do that, doesn't say, well, my opponent's going to score 1% against me, so why am I using all of my energy to score 99.5% instead of 99%? So they don't play as well. Like when I stream and I don't play very well and I get lots of lost positions against lower ranked players because I know I'm going to win anyway. And then occasionally I don't, but I still score 95% against players under 2,000. The one person who doesn't do that, and there's probably more than one, but that's Ray Robson. Ray Robson doesn't assume he's going to win and play too fast and underestimate his opponent. He never does that. Ray Robson tries to find the best move every position. Okay. So he played G6, which is just a mistake. And I've told my students for many years that there's many positions in chess, and they will happen in your games, when there's a white pawn on E4 and a black knight on F6. And maybe that happens in 25, 30% of all chess games. Those things are where they are. In those instances, it would behoove white to play E5 and force the knight to a poor square. And I've seen a lot of games from my students and other class players where with the black pieces, they're not preventing E5, which they should, and then white is not playing E5, which they should. And so then I choke on my own rage and wonder why I'm teaching chess when every move is terrible. Sort of like, you want to score a touchdown in football and you're a wide receiver and the other team decides not to defense you, so you're just standing by yourself. And the quarterback looks at you and goes, and throws like a 2-yard pass. It's like that. And then you wonder why those teams don't do well. Except you don't. So G6 is just a mistake because white can play E5. And in the previous position, before white played knight C3, if white plays E5, black plays knight D5, which is an excellent square for the knight. And this position, you'll see in my course. Okay, so that's why in my course, I recommend E5 here. Okay, so he played G6. Now he's already worse. Much worse. Knight H5. Takes the knight. And castles. Okay, knight G7 is okay. And D3. Okay, and now if Levon was my student, I wouldn't complain very much so far, but I would tell him you can't let white play E5 and then you move your knight 50 times. Obviously, Levon knows that, so he's not my student. And here, Levon did something worse. Instead of moving the knight to a reasonable square, probably E6, but F5 looks reasonable too. Then the bishop can go to G7, and then black can castle. Levon decided to play crazy and played the move H6. And I thought when I saw H6, the idea was to not play knight E6, but to play knight F5. And then the bishop can go to E6. And then the knight can't go to G5 and attack the bishop. So then black would play knight F5 and bishop E6 and bishop G7 and castles. And black's worse because black is so slow. Black has no development. Terrible. Okay. Somebody said, what happens if knight G4 instead of knight knight G4 is equally good? Then we would take and kick the knight in here. And the knight can't go to E6. It can only go to F5. So this would be a little bit better for white than what Levon did. Because Levon's knight on G7 could go to either square, and this knight can only go to F5. Okay, so they got this position. He played H6, which is a poor move. And the reason he played H6 is worse than the move H6. Knight E4 attacks the pawn. You can play knight E6 or B6. They're equally good. Rook E1. And this position, I don't like what Levon did, but I wouldn't complain a lot if it was my student. Because, the knight has to move. You can't stay on G7 the whole game. E6 is a better square. But, okay, he went to F5, that's fine. It's not as good, but all right, whatever. Okay, and after C3, Levon went insane. So thus far, we're on move 11, and Black has moved his knight many times, and Black has made lots of pawn moves. So that's terrible. And the engine says White has huge advantage, and the numbers it's giving indicate to me if two supercomputers were playing, White would win more than it would be a draw. So Black's played quite badly. And thanks for the $5, Matt Meyer. Thanks, Lupata, for subscribing. So in this position, to indicate how poorly the engine thinks Black is playing, the engine says the best move is knight G7. It doesn't like knight F5. Okay, and now played a very poor move, G5. And he indicated in an interview that a student of mine told me he saw, which I didn't see, was that when he played H6, his plan was to play G5 at some point, which he did. Okay, terrible. Now, the reason this is terrible is none of this is theory. It's not like Levon prepped this line. Nobody would prep this line with Black. It's terrible. And the engine already thinks White is +1. But the reason I'm upset about what Levon is doing, if I was his coach, was Levon getting this terrible position on move 11 has used 9 minutes. That's unacceptable. You can't have a lost position after 10 moves and you've used 9 minutes on your clock and none of it's prep. It could be you did lousy prep and you thought you had a good position and you were wrong. That's one thing. But this is no prep. He's playing by the seat of his pants and he's playing too quickly. Probably needs new pants. That would be my guess. Okay, and White played Queen A4. And Levon made the worst move. And not only did he make the worst move, he did it in about 2 minutes. So this is just unacceptable. And in this position, Black has several moves that defend the pawn on C6. And he chose a move that lost immediately. And it's not a question of miscalculation or misunderstanding. It's a question of him playing too quickly. And Levon does play quickly in the opening when he has a lot of prep. But you can't play quickly in a slow game when you have no prep and you're just making moves. And the only reason Levon did this, that I can see, is he's 600 points higher than his opponent, so he's not taking his opponent seriously. Okay, so I could put the evaluation bar on. Let's vote. It's probably better if it's not there so you guys can think, but thinking's not your strong suit usually. Do people want the evaluation bar or they want it off? It takes 1 second to turn it on. No eval, terrible. No, put the eval on, please. Wait, what? You gave both the answers. Abstain. In my mind, Black is winning. Well, most people want it on, although some of the answers are confusing me. Pat Buchanan, abstain. I'll turn it on because, why not? Why care? Okay, so white has good position. Okay, now black makes the worst move, losing immediately. He played queen c7. And, you know, when there's a rook on e1 and a king on e8, which in Levron's career isn't going to happen very often, you're not going to, you know, have such a bad thing happen to you, then you have to be extra careful. And if you look at the clock, Levon has 121, and then he plays queen c7, and he has 119. And top players like Levon have a great sense of danger. And this game, until a certain point, he had no sense of danger. He made a million knight moves, he made a million pawn moves, and then he moved his queen to the wrong square. And, you know, if you're a top player and you see the rook and the king lined up, you're very scared. And Levon wasn't scared at all, and now white's winning. Now, the obvious way to win doesn't work. If you play knight d6, takes, it's check, and you threaten the queen. Obviously, Levon saw that, but Levon would have taken with the knight and then taken with the queen. So black is okay. So white wins relatively simply by stopping the knight from going to d6, which is easy. And when I teach my students, I tell them there's two things they have to do. And if they get better at chess, they can do a third thing. And some of my students are better at chess, so they can do the third thing. First thing is to look at all checks. So Levon must have looked at all checks and decided those weren't good. Then you have to look at all captures. G-pawn can be captured 3 times. C5 pawn can be captured. And A7 and C6 can be captured. And I think if white had played any of those moves, the checks and the captures, Levon would have already briefly glanced at them and concluded, yeah, those are no good. Then when you get better at chess, and you've done all of that quickly, you can look at moves that attack pieces, starting with the big ones first. And there's no move here that's not a capture that attacks the black queen or the black rooks or the black bishops. And typically, when you look at attacking moves, you first look at the moves that attack things that are in the proximity of the opponent's position. And the black piece that's in the proximity of white's position, the closest is the knight on f5. And then the queen on c7, and then these are all tied for last. So in this position, if Levon was paying attention and playing his best, he would have said, okay, all these captures suck, and I'm sure he did, and the checks suck, and what about attacking my pieces? And the only move that attacks the knight that isn't ridiculous is g4. Knight d4 is ridiculous, knight h4 is ridiculous, knight g3 doesn't attack the knight, it just threatens to trade knights, so that's not an attack. But g4 attacks the knight. And if Levon was playing a blitz game, I would assume that Levon would play g4 very quickly and have a winning position. And so if Levon is good enough to play g4, he's good enough to not allow g4. It's the same move. And this is especially true for 2 reasons. This is a slow game, and this is a team event. And the team event, I don't know about Levon, but I try harder not to lose because my team's counting on me. I can't blunder and lose to somebody 600 points lower rated. This game is important. This is a chess Olympiad, and we're the highest rated team. My team's counting on me. We need Levon. So queen c7 is is beyond ridiculous for somebody of Levin's rating. Okay, so G4 was played, and if Levin was playing somebody his own rating, I think he would resign here. That's what I think. And it's justified. Black's losing a piece. You can't move the knight because knight d6 check wins. You can't not move the knight because your knight's hanging. And the engine, says like total nonsense. It says like knight h4, knight takes, bishop g7. Come on. Just being a knight down. And it also says knight here, knight takes, bishop g7. Like what? And the reason is knight d6 check is so crushing. Black's king has to move, and the f7 pawn's hanging, so forth. Okay, so Levin, at this point, started thinking and started playing well. And, it's too late, except for one thing. When your opponent's 600 rating points lower than you, at some point, they're going to try to prove it. And you have to let them prove it. So, but yeah, I mean, if this was like Carlsen, Aronian would resign here. Okay, so Aronian played queen b7 because this gets out of the knight d6 winning your queen trick because the queen's not on c7 anymore. So he's just down a piece. Okay, and nothing happens. He's down a piece. They play moves. Moves don't matter. Down a piece. Okay, and bishop d7 causes white to think a little bit because the queen is sort of funny on the side. What's funny is if two engines were playing, white would play knight c5, sacrificing the knight because that's the most winning. But I can't imagine a human being a piece up for nothing, sacrificing their piece to be winning in a different kind of way. I might do it in a blitz game, but I'm not going to play knight c5 in a slow game. I'm up a piece. Okay, so he plays queen a3, and his idea is if e6 attacking the queen, he'll play bishop b4, although knight d6 is also good. So Aronian wants to play e6 and put pressure on the queen. He knows that doesn't accomplish a lot, and the bishop on d7 would suck forever. So Aronian plays bishop f5, so when he plays e6, his bishop is outside of his pawn chain. Rook c1, e6 attacking the queen, queen a4. Now the c pawn is attacked, so Aronian plays rook c8. Now if I was white, if it was me, I would be like, I'm a piece up, I'm winning, I'm going to win. He'll resign at some point. But my queen's on the side of the board, so let's play queen c4 and queen e2, and I'm piece up. And black has no compensation. Compensation is the queen is stuck on the side. But it's not real compensation, it's like imagined compensation. Okay, he played rook c3. He wants to play knight c5, take on c5, and then rook b3, pinning the queen to the king. So Aronian plays king a8 so that rook b3 doesn't pin the queen to the king. Knight g3. I mean, the knight's good on e4, but all right, that's fine. Okay, and this position, white made a very poor move. Lots of moves are good. It's actually hard to suggest a move that's not good, except what white did. And this position, when white played knight g3, you should expect black will play bishop h3, because you don't want to lose your bishop. Then you can play c5 and queen g2 mate. So I don't like knight g3 because I don't want my opponents to play bishop h3, but that's okay. Whatever. Now in this position, white could move his queen to get it back into the game as I espoused earlier, or white could put the knight on e4, which is a good square for the knight, and that attacks the bishop, and it blocks the queen from g2. And most importantly, it repeats the position. Always repeat. White blundered here and played knight f1, and in this position, Levon Aronian took out his 2700 FIDE card and used it. And I've shown this position to 2 or 3 students. Nothing. They got nothing. But this is brilliant what Levon did here. Brilliant. And the engine was saying white's plus 3.5 and white's plus 4 and white's plus 4.5, the last move since white won a piece. Now it says white's plus 1. However, if black doesn't play the correct way, then white's plus 3 again. And Levon's like, I'm 2,700 for a reason. And a lot of you said Levon got lucky, but a lot of people resign when they're down a piece because they don't listen to me or they don't know who I am. When I tell my students never to resign, they resign anyway. Okay. Levon didn't resign, so maybe next time you're down a piece for nothing, you won't resign either, but I doubt it. So in this position, white played knight f1, threatening the bishop on h3. And so a typical player would move the bishop or play g4 because rook takes h3 is not good to allow. But in this position, without anybody telling Levon that this is a puzzle, he found puzzle-like answer. Anti-positional, but it follows my rule of checks and captures and threats. So there's no checks. There's 0 checks. That was easy. There's 1 capture, and giving up that bishop gets rid of all of black's play. That's ridiculous. Now, if you're not going to play a check or a capture, and there are no legal checks, now we have to attack things. And we want to attack the big things and the closest things. And those things are this queen. That's the closest piece to black's position. So it's the easiest to attack. And it's the biggest. So the first move you look at after checks and captures, of which there's almost 0, is b5. b5 is easy to analyze because if white wants to save their queen, white plays queen a5. And all you have to do is put faith in the system of analyze attacking the queen and see if it gets you anywhere. And after b5, queen a5, a dumb way to attack the queen, which turns out not to be dumb, is bishop b4. And that traps the queen. The queen must take the bishop. And now we attack the queen for a third time, c5. And unfortunately for white, that also threatens checkmate. And that's very difficult to see unless I give you several hints and show you. And Levon saw it, and his opponent did not. So Levon played b5. He saw the variation I just told you, which is queen a5, bishop b4, takes, c5, threatening the queen and mate. So you make your own luck in chess. And in this position, after b5, surprisingly, white did not play queen a5, confusing the audience. Because it looks like queen a5 is the only move. And what white should do is in this position, white should bail out to getting 3 pieces for a queen. There's 2 ways to do it. You can take, then take the bishop, and then take on b4. And the engine says white has a big advantage here. The 3 pieces are better than the queen, and white has all these really nice squares for their pieces, d6 and c5 and f6. And, black doesn't have a lot of activity here. Another way to play, which the engine prefers, is to take the bishop right away and then take this. And here, it even says black should play c5 to give a pawn away to get some activity. Otherwise, this knight's going to go to c5 and black doesn't really have any play. And both of those lines give white an advantage, although maybe not a winning advantage. But instead, white didn't want to do that, so white bailed out with knight a5. And now, when we trade queens, if black carelessly takes on b7, then you lose your bishop on h3. So he took the knight on f1, and we get an equal material position where the engine slightly prefers white after knight d6, but he took. And now, if two super GMs are playing, you would expect this game to be a draw. Unfortunately, white is not a super GM. White is 2100. So if you have a complicated equal position, you're going to bet on black. Whether you're a fan of Wesley Snipes or you're a fan of Aronian, doesn't matter. You bet on black. Okay, Levon, instead of saving his pawn with a3, which is the engine move, just sacrifices the pawn, which is fine, and gets an active position. And the engine says that this should be a draw. It says this is a drawn ending, and everything is a draw, and material's equal, and everybody's drawing, and everybody's happy. And in this position, h4 is the best move, but he played f4. Not as good, but okay. Still a draw. And here, what white did was okay, but rook e1 is the easiest way to draw. Played rook e3, also good. Rook f1. And in this position where white was winning between moves like 10 and 20, and now it's move 40, and the position is a draw, white has to show some care. And white didn't show any care and paid the price. And this is the 40th move, so that's unfortunate. If it was like the 35th move, white would have probably had more time and played a good move. But here white had 40 seconds, and he had to move. Now, obviously, psychologically, white's not very happy. White's trying to draw, and white knows he was completely winning and up a piece like an hour and a half ago. So it's hard to keep playing when you're going to beat somebody much higher rated than you, and you know it, and they know it, and then time goes by, you make a mistake or two, and now you're not going to win, and you're trying to draw. Very unlikely to draw those positions. And he played rook f2, very bad move, last move of time control, and black played h4 check. You can't take the pawn because you lose your rook, so you have to go back here. Black has several ways to get an excellent position. The engine takes the rook and plays rook d8. Levon played here. And now white has one move that gives him drawing chances, but he didn't find it. In fact, he played a move that loses immediately. And that's why endgames are so difficult, and you need to take a lot of time, because often one move will draw the game and other moves lose. Or one move wins the game and other moves draw. Happens a lot in endgames. So you have to take your time. And white blundered here. The best move is f5. And the idea is black wants to play h3, king g3, rook g1 check, and f5 provides an escape square on f4, and that happenstance. And instead, white did something else, and I know why he did it. I'll show you why he did it. He played this rook to e2, losing immediately to h3, rook g1. And in this position, white may have calculated here, and now with his rooks on the 7th rank for his opponent, h2 is not possible because I can take it. And if the white rook, one of them was on the 3rd rank, then we could check and play h2, or just play h2 right away and skewer and win the rook. But with the rooks here, white has prevented that. That's probably what white was thinking when he doubled his rooks on the 2nd rank. Unfortunately, we don't need all this queening the h-pawn to win. We just take, and even though material is equal, black has the unstoppable threat of rook g7, and then one of the rooks goes to the h-file checkmate. The white king is checkmated. Probably white didn't realize his king was checkmated. He was more worried about black queening. And here white resigned, because I'm going to play here next move. If you play king here, I mate you this way. So nothing you can do. So Levon won. Now, a funny way to win, in case this wasn't a win, which is very interesting to me, is to never play f6, which is also winning because it threatens rook h8 mate. And this position, if you play rook h8, I go here, and white is fine. White's king is active. And the point of f6 is we threaten mate. White doesn't want to get mated and takes. And now when we check, since white can't play king f6, we have the move g3, which is incredibly winning. Because if you take it, I take with checkmate, because the white pawn is on f6. And if you don't take it, it's worse than checkmate. Black's going to get all kinds of extra queens and rooks. There's no move here for white. White has to resign. So f6 was also winning for a different reason. And that would be a brilliant way to win if black didn't have the simple g3, rook g3, and white resigned. Then this way of winning, playing here and then checking and then playing g3, that's actually sort of nice. But Levon knew never play f6, so he played g3, and white resigned. So, very disappointing game for white, who was beating somebody 600 points better than him right out of the opening. And then Levon turned on his 2700-ness and was able to wiggle his way out and eventually win the game. The truth hurts. Hopefully, if you're watching the stream, or you're watching on YouTube later, this teaches you the lesson of never resigning. Black's position was definitely one that if two grandmasters were playing would be often resigned. Black would be resigning all the time, more than half the time. More than 70% of the time between moves 11 and 16, black would have resigned that game. But by not resigning and making some threats and brilliantly playing b5, bishop b4, c5, which wasn't allowed because white didn't like that, Levon was able to not only save the game, but then win a drawn endgame. The only thing you can say about that is America. And so forth. And so on. Yeah, Levon's played in the U.S. Championship and played for the U.S. for several years. He hasn't played for Armenia in like 5 years. Also, Richard Rapport played for Romania? Maybe? And now he plays for Hungary again, which I didn't know. I thought he just played for Romania. And there's a guy who's played for every country. Movsesian's played for every country. But there's a guy, is it Nadic or Nisipianu? I think it's Nadic. One of them has played for every country also. There's 2 or 3 guys who've played for 5 or 6 countries. So I never know what team they're going to be on. Yeah, Lenier's Cuban, and he moved to the U.S. and plays for the U.S. Lenier's also played for the U.S. for like 5 years. Yay, JAA928 subscribed at tier 1. Go JAA928. And so forth. You read an article on Reddit, that was your first mistake. He wants to play in the next one representing Japan. Yeah, that's not going to happen. 100 bits from Xmon407. Yeah, if it's on Reddit, then it's wrong. Reddit is actually a translation from the Sumerian, which means wrong. I don't know if you guys knew that. And the people who invented Reddit thought that was funny. Because they knew it was the internet, everything would be wrong. Yay, Xmon got his new 1K badge. Problem with moving to a country that doesn't have a lot of title players, so you can play on the Olympiad team, typically those countries don't have a lot of money, and the players often have to pay their airfare and accommodation. And bigger federations, they pay that for the players and often give the players a fee also. So a lot of times in these small countries and federations, the people who play in the Olympiad are people who can afford it, not necessarily the best players in the federation. Yes, that's a well-known tactic, to reply to your own posts with incorrect information so people correct you. No, I haven't heard about that, but that makes sense. It's funny, FIDE just announced that one of the big sponsors of the World Championship between Ding and Gukesh will be Microsoft. But for some reason, there's no additional prize money. So they have this huge sponsor with billions of dollars, hundreds of billions, and the prize fund is the same. Truth hurts. Do you know about the Alien Gambit? I made a lecture on the Alien Gambit about 4 months ago. And so forth. Wait, was it Microsoft or was it Google? I already forgot. I think it's Google. I changed my mind. And it's the same company. They're both just evil. I think it's Google that's sponsoring the World Championship, not Microsoft. The important thing is to spread misinformation. I mean, Google and Microsoft, that's the same thing. Will you ever lecture on the Botez Gambit? The Botez Gambit, lives in the ether. It's not really a gambit. It's not something that exists. It just means you blundered your queen. Many people blunder their queen. Yeah, Google, Microsoft, whatever it is, FIDE cannot add to the prize fund. It doesn't matter how much or how big the sponsor is, prize fund stays the same. Okay, let's go to something else. I don't want to look at that. Or that. All right, we'll look at this. This is a game played in round 2 of the Olympiad between Singapore and U.S. Ray Robson was black. And Ray Robson played like 99.1 or something, or maybe even better. I want to get to the end of the game. Okay. Okay, so I can explain this position much better than an engine can. Because an engine can't explain anything. Engine says this is a draw, and the reason the engine says that is because this is a draw. Thank you, St. Louis Chess Club, for rating. I hope you guys had a good stream. Okay, and if you're a grandmaster, then you know which side is playing for a win here. And if you're not a grandmaster, then you don't, and you could randomly guess. But if I show this position to grandmasters, and I say, would you rather have white or black? They all give the same answer. All of them. And the engine doesn't care at all, because the engine knows it's going to play perfect with either side, and the game's going to end in a draw. Now, what's funny about this is with perfect play, and this a-pawn gone, with the rooks not attacking each other, this position is a draw. And with the a-pawn, this position is a draw. White has a passed pawn, and black doesn't. So most weaker players, I would say, would think white, they'd rather have white. And if we switch the rooks, then white is probably winning. If we just put this rook on this side of the pawn and put this rook on this side of the pawn, then white's rook behind the passed pawn, then everybody's taking white all day and twice on Sunday. However, with the rooks the way they are, every grandmaster is taking black. And some grandmasters would just give their a-pawn away and try to set up a drawn rook and 4 versus rook and 3 position. Now, as you all know, black wants to play g5 here and stop white from playing h4. What black wants to have all of the pawns on the board, and white doesn't want to have any pawns on the board. So if white plays h4 and black pushes their kingside pawns, there will be trades. So Ray Robson played the best move, g5, stopping h4. What would Levy say? Levy would probably just think it's equal, and he'd have to have it explained to him that black is better. Then he would argue, because he would look at the engine evaluation and see that the game is a draw and not understand why black would be better. But it could be explained to him by, probably his chess coach isn't good enough to explain it to him. He has like a low-rated grandmaster as his coach. Probably that guy doesn't know that black's better here either. Okay, but ignorance is bliss. So you just, stuff you don't know, you look at the engine, and you go about your life. That's okay. It's funny, Levy told me a while ago he was attracted to this woman on one of the Star Trek shows, I think The Next Generation. And I said, who? And he said, 7 of 9. And I said, 7 of 9? He goes, yeah. I said, she's attractive, but she'll never go out with you. And he said, why? And I said, she's 7 of 9, and you're 2 of 9. Truth hurts. Okay, so white played fine. Nothing wrong with white's play. And black played h4. Thanks, Massini, for subscribing at tier 1. Hooray! And in this position, white has a choice. Do I let black take? Do I take and mess my pawns up? Or do I play g4 and weaken my h-pawn? So my king has to stay on my h-pawn. And g4 allows the black king to go to f4, and then f5 and rook here, and black will progress. So he ended up taking, which messes his pawns up. Now, white did something that I would do, and it's fine, but it's not necessary. But I would do it too. He decided he doesn't want his rook in front of the passed pawn, because then when he pushes it, it can't move anymore. So he plays rook b8 and rook b5 and gets his rook to the side of the pawn. And this is also drawn. And black is playing for a win. Slowly but surely. Nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. You gotta tease the guy a little bit. That's good. Okay, now black would like to play e3. So rook e6 is good. And g4, because you got to do something. And this position, white played by far the best move, taking. And you should see here that black has been playing for a win, even though the engine still says it's equal, because black has a better king. With black having more pawns on the king side than white, black's king is always going to be better. My king can advance, and your king can't advance into my 4 pawns. So it was always good for black. The engine still says it's a draw, and that's why a lot of people have trouble getting better, because they're a slave to the engine. The engine says it's a draw, so then, you know, if they don't understand chess as well as some people, they just, well, this is equal. And again, in a position like this, any grandmaster's taking black, because even though it's a draw with correct play, black could win, but white cannot win. There's no winning plan for white. White can't say, oh, I do this, and I do this, and I win. Nothing. Okay, checks. Position's a draw. Black's not winning. White's playing fine. Okay, and in this position, if we play e3, which looks good, then I can play king here, and you can't win. If you take, I just play king g2. This is a dead draw. And if you take, this is a dead draw. And if you play e2, then I can check your king away, or I can play rook b1 and rook e1, and this is also a dead draw. And if your king goes here, I just, actually rook e1 draws, which is funny. And now a7, and your rook can't do both. So black can't win. Okay, so Ray didn't play e3 because that doesn't work. He played f4. And in this position, the absolute best move according to the engine is one nobody would play, and that's king h3. Nobody's playing king h3 ever. Ridiculous. And the idea is, if black takes, we play check and rook a5, and then white has winning chances. He played king g1. Now, the engine says black is seriously better. And you can see in this position, white took over 3 minutes of thinking time before playing king g1. And then always play f3. Now, white has to play pretty well to draw. And if two engines are playing, it's a draw. And in this position, it's time for white to give up the a-pawn and try to draw the 2 versus 1. And he checked, which is okay. Rook b6 is okay. Hard for white to move. If white moves the king, you have to watch out for this. And if white plays king f1, then there's rook a1 leads to mate. So he checks again. And in this position, white makes the losing move. And the truth hurts. So the way to draw is to do nothing. Rook e5, a7 draws. The 2 versus 1 is a draw. But if I had white here, I wouldn't be very happy. And white blundered because he had little time on his clock, and he played rook b4. Now, black has one move that wins. And arguably, rook b4 is the only bad move white played in this game. White also had a very high cap score. But rook b4 loses, and I'm guessing he just forgot about Ray's move. He was in time trouble. He had 2 minutes left, and he blundered. And a raider from the St. Louis Chess Club agreed with what Ray did, which is king h3. And in this position, if white plays rook e5 and you play king h3, I just check your king away. If you play king h3 and I can check you on any of these squares, it's a draw. But once you play rook b4, now king h3 is winning, black's threatening mate, and white only has one move that stops rook a1, and that's rook b1. And now, taking the pawn wins, but Ray played, quicker way to win, which is to play e3. And black is crashing through against white's king. It doesn't matter what you do, you're losing. He took king g3, and if these pawns weren't here, this is a well-known win, and those pawns don't help. It doesn't matter that the pawns are there. With the king and pawn on the 6th rank being an f pawn, this is just an easy win. White played e4, and then after check, he resigned as his well-known rook here threatening mate, and then f2, and then check, and then here. Well-known way to win. And probably the only mistake white made that game was playing rook b4. And then king h3 wins, and that was it. And black was always in the driver's seat. The engine knows how to give up a pawn and draw these positions that are very poor. Where black's up a pawn, black has a better king, black has advanced pawns. And black is a very high-rated player, but in time trouble, it's easy to make a mistake. So when this endgame started, with the 4 versus 3, it just looked like it's a draw and nobody's better. But since black had the better king, black was able to advance his pawns. White put the rook on the side of the pawn, so the rook's a little more active, but then the pawn can't push. White has to draw this pawned out ending, and it might have been easier from the start if he had just given up his a-pawn, which nobody wants to do. And the final position is here. The truth hurts. Better king, better rook, Papa John's. Yay, buy merch. A lot of people ask the question on, not just to me, but on Twitter, and they discuss it on the internets. If so-and-so is playing for the world championship or is world champion, will Magnus come back to play chess in the world championship? Magnus doesn't care who the world champion is. He doesn't care who's playing for the world championship. He's not going to try to prevent somebody from being world champion because he doesn't like them. He doesn't care about any of that. He doesn't like the format of the world championship. He's already won that format many times. He doesn't find it interesting anymore. He's been the best player in the world for so long, it doesn't interest him anymore. And a lot of people think, well, if it's Nakamura, then he'll play to make sure Nakamura doesn't become world champion. Insert Hans Niemann's name there also. He doesn't care about that. He doesn't care who the world champion is. He's already been world champion many times. He's more interested in having fun with his life. He doesn't sit around thinking about other people and how he can thwart them. That's what you guys do. You guys are very interested in that. But he's not interested. That's not how top players think. How can I get this other guy? Unless you're in a rap battle, then, you got to get the other guy. Truth hurts. So Magnus isn't going to play in the world championship anymore because he literally doesn't care. World champions will get progressively weaker until the title is meaningless, which it sort of is now. Gukesh is like the third best player in India. He's going to be world champion. Man. Ding's not even the best player in China anymore. God damn. Yeah, I saw the Paraguay one. I was rooting for them. Don't you guys have Axel Bachmann? He could be from Paraguay. What do I know? And he's lucky to be number 16. Okay, so we have to look at this game, which I think was played today, unless it wasn't. Then this game wasn't played today. I think it was. It was played today. This is Benjamin Gladura. And of course, there's the unanswerable question, who's the best Benjamin in the world? It's either this guy or Benjamin Bach. Nobody knows. It could be either one. Their ratings are almost exactly the same. And Gladura, I think, plays for Hungary, unless I'm wrong. And Benjamin Bach plays for the Netherlands. Yeah, everything you guys said was correct. Reading the chats. And I lost to Benjamin Gladura in the World Open about 4 or 5 years ago. He was winning, and then he made a mistake, and the rook ending was a draw, and I was in time trouble, and I missed the drawing move. But he was winning before that. He just gave me a chance. And then I had no chance after I missed the drawing move. And it was embarrassing. And then he really confused me because when the game ended, he said, "I'll be back." And I was like, "Aren't you Gladura?" I didn't know what was going on. I thought he was Dutch. Benjamin Bach is Dutch, not Gladura. What did I say the Bach was? I know he's Dutch, but I don't know what I said he was. I could have said anything. I could he say he's Russian? Okay, so according to the engine, according to the cap score that doesn't matter that chess.com gives each game if you ask it, although it matters to Kramnik, so it matters a little bit. Benjamin Gladura played 99.9 this game. God damn. Where's Kramnik to file an appeal? Man, you play 99.9 against another grandmaster? God damn. That's pretty good. So this was the best played game in the Olympiad according to the cap score. But I just like the ending of the game. Okay, so they played Ruy Lopez, anti-Berlin, one of the boring variations until it wasn't boring. White is very slightly better. Very slightly better. And I'm sure this is all theory and prep and so forth. Okay, and I guess black is out of theory because black's used a lot of time and white hasn't used a lot of time. So I guess black got out of his prep before white did. Yeah, the engine already likes white. Basically, all of white's moves are correct. It's funny, if I was playing a blitz game, I'm playing king h1 here without thinking, and bishop e3 is the best move. And he's not in his prep. He actually thought 10 minutes here. But bishop e3 is better than king h1. So white has a nice attack against black's king. Black doesn't have a lot of counterplay. And rook e8's the losing move. So the engine says black should play queen e6, and white is up about 0.6. After rook e8, the engine says the black is completely losing. Yeah, rook e8 really undefends the f7 pawn. And I assume at some point Felix wanted to play knight e5 as a reason to play rook e8, but you ain't playing knight e5. So rook e8's just bad. And I'm guessing when Felix played rook e8, he saw queen g3, knight e3, and he said to himself, I'm threatening the rook, and I'm threatening c2. I'm the best. But what Felix forgot about was you always sack the exchange. And you always play knight f5. And Benjamin Gladura knows that because we're Benjamins. We're like that, son. So Benjamin plays knight d4, attacking the knight and getting the kingside attack ready. And the engine says that white is already winning. Also defends c2. Takes, knight takes, and there's a small chance that black saw that white could do this and underestimated it, but I doubt it. I think somebody as grandmaster with the black pieces should realize this is not good for black. White has too much attack, and white has more attack coming. The engine just says black resigns. g6 is forced. Rook f1, threatening knight h6 check and take on f7. The engine line here is king h7, takes, rook takes, threatening queen here, mate, g5, rook check, king h5, exclam, queen check, queen g4, rook h6, and to me this is obviously winning for white. White has too many extra pawns. The engine says +3. These pawns are all weak. Pawn's weak. That's the best black could do. And black played queen d8, and now the engine instantly announces mate. God damn. Check. And king g7 is a mistake, but the best move is king h8, losing your queen. So this human's going to play here. And then queen e3 check. Somehow he didn't resign here. He played till mate. So if you play king here or king here, I mate you with the same moves in a reverse order. So white's next two moves are going to be h3 and rook h7, whichever one's check. So after king h5, it's going to be rook h7 because that's check. If it's king g4, it's going to be h3 because that's check. And here, black intentionally played on to mate for the spectators. Spectators have rights. So that was a pretty good game for white. White did everything right. So black is a grandmaster, but he played pretty poorly and lost to sacrifice and didn't defend well. The truth hurts. That's the guy who beat me in the World Open. Boo, boo, you were lucky. Lucky he was playing me. Can you show Magnus's game? I can't. It's too bad I can't show it. You'd think I could, but somehow I can't. But more importantly, let's see how the Braves are doing. The Braves are up 5-2 against... I'm not playing the Dodgers. Wow. We're beating the Dodgers. Good, good. Hello. Welcome to this. Checking my email. It says I'm streaming. That is true. All right, we had to get rid of a spammer. Why isn't Belgium playing in the Olympiad? Because they are. I've seen Belgium play every round. Truth hurts. By the way, if you watch all of my streams and listen to all my ranting, that's the kind of question I was referring to before. Somebody makes a statement and a question that's wrong and then asks about it. Those are the worst questions. Like, why aren't Trump and Harris running for president? They are running for president. But those are the kind of questions I get on the stream a lot. Why isn't Belgium playing in the Olympiad? They are playing in the Olympiad. Like, the premise of the question's wrong. This happens all the time on the internets. Happens a lot on Twitter, especially. People make statements that are false and then continue on with questions about that statement. and so forth. Anyway, you're banned. Lichess was down for a day or so. Yeah, Belgium played the Netherlands yesterday. Yeah. The craziest thing about Erigaisi was he beat me. I was kicking his ass. I can't believe I lost to him. That was terrible. That was 2 weeks ago on Title Tuesday. I had him dead to rights, and then I made bad moves and lost. That's right. Lichess offended the chess mafia, so they were offline for a while. Geary's not having a good year. Geary's going to fall out of the top 20. I guess he already did. And Geary was like number 4 or 5 in the world until he wasn't. All right, what else do I got? Speaking of Arjun, okay, we'll start here, where Arjun's already winning. This game was played today. As you can see, White has a slight attack against the Black King. God damn. Okay, Arjun played the best move, e4, best by test, rook f7, queen d2. The engine prefers e5, but that's okay. Queen f8. Now, Arjun played an excellent move. He's trying to hit these dark squares. You know, h6 and g7 and f6. So he plays the move d5, getting rid of some of the dark square defense for black. cd. Black can play differently, but it doesn't matter. e5, the best move. Bishop takes h4. And then e6. Now, because White played e6, he's opening up the latent potential of the bishop, which is now actualized potential. And therefore, the h-pawn is hanging because the g-pawn is pinned. Also, the rook is hanging. So the truth hurts. Okay, he played rook f6. Okay, now, in this position, the engine announces mate. It says mate in some number of moves. Let's see if anybody in the chat who isn't using an engine or looking at the game can figure out what move White can make, which leads to checkmate. That was the move that Erigaisi played. I figure whoever gives the answer correct first is cheating. Of all the answers on YouTube and Twitch, there's one right answer. We have one right answer followed by an illegal move. Not sure if I can give that credit. Why not queen h6? Then pawn takes queen. Yeah, e7 is correct. Okay, and the reason e7 is correct is it attacks the queen, and the queen is defending h6. So that's why queen h6 didn't force checkmate last move. Now, it doesn't matter what black does, they get checkmated, but he allowed the prettiest checkmate. He played queen e7, and now White has mate in 3. It's good he played queen e7, so we get to see the nice checkmate. Other GMs don't care about other games. They just care about their game. Yeah, it's queen h6. And if you play king g8, I just do this, and then it's mate in one. So you have to take, and the rook is pinned. So black played here, and then mate. Proving that Arjun is better than his opponent. I think India was playing Hungary 2 today. The B team. Not as good as the A team, you know, with Mr. T and such. Okay, and then I want to show another Arjun game to end the stream, but not the game. Something I've never seen before in chess history. I'm sure it's happened. I've just never seen it. And you haven't seen it either. Okay. We have this position from today's game. From yesterday's game. This is India versus Iceland. Per person, Iceland is a stronger chess country than India. Truth hurts. Iceland has the most grandmasters in the world per population. The difference in population between India and Iceland, you can't get much bigger than that. It's hard to name two countries that have a bigger population disparity. You could do it, but it wouldn't be easy. Okay, so White's winning. Arjun played rook d3, which is one of the winning moves. And, you know, White has a better king than Black. White has a pass c pawn. White has 3-1 on the queen side. So took the rook, takes, and king e4 wins. Every move wins. Okay, now, this is the thing I've never seen before. It hasn't happened yet, but as it's happening, I'll tell you. So this is move 33, and Black played g5. Again, several moves win. He took on passant. Yeah, it doesn't matter what Black does here. Black's losing. And then, in this position, White has one move that wins. So a5 is a good try. This position is a draw unless White plays the only winning move. This is why you guys aren't as good as Arjun. I didn't know why. And then I found out why because of this game. What's funny is if I was White here and I was playing a tournament game and I had time on my clock, I would be like, this wins and this wins and this wins and this wins. Then I would calculate them and I would be like, nothing wins. What the hell? But there is one move that wins. The only way to get it is to calculate. And you guys don't do that. Whenever I ask you guys questions, you just type in the first legal move you think of. And the only way to know which move wins is to calculate all the variations to the end. And you guys aren't doing that. That's why you're not as good as Arjun. Arjun doesn't say, I hope this wins. Dang, it didn't. He calculates every legal move all the way to the end, then plays the one that wins. And he already knew it before this. He didn't sit here for 10 minutes and go, okay, that's the move that wins. I'm lucky I had that. He already knew that A5 lost. No, for you guys to solve this, if the average player watching is 1,300, I don't know, making a number up, you need to calculate for a long time. But when you answer the question in 1 second and hope that your answer is the right move, it's still not right. You're just typing a move in. You can have your whole life. The only way to solve it is to calculate it. What's funny is I told you guys the answer about 7 minutes ago. But you have to get my hints. I gave you guys a hint of what the right answer was. I said, this is something I've never seen in chess. I'll give you a hint that should give everybody the answer, but it won't. But it should. You'll agree that it should. If white plays king e4, king c7, king e5, king d7, this is the same position that we had, and now white's not winning. That should give you the answer. Yay, it's Dina. Hey, Dina. Yeah, and that's what I haven't seen before. On move 33, Arjun took en passant on g6, and then 5 moves later, the last move of the game, he took en passant on a6. I don't think I've seen 2 en passant captures 5 moves apart, and after the second one, black resigned. Also, it's very difficult to find a game that ends with an en passant capture. It's not easy. There's not a lot of games where a guy goes en passant and the guy resigns. That's the grandmaster level. And taking en passant is the only winning move. Notice in this position, It's funny, there's a 30-second increment. Arjun plays this move instantly, king e5. He plays this move instantly. He plays this move after thinking 30 seconds. And here he thinks like 40 seconds and takes. He already knew that that was winning, but he was double checking. It took him 40 seconds to double check. And the reason this wins is you have to move the king to the c file. Otherwise I queen. And then I take. I play a7. Play c6 check. Play c7. And I win by one. If you play here, I queen. And if you play here, I queen with check. And surprisingly, other moves don't win. For example, if you go here and you take and you play b7, then I can play king c7 or take and it's a draw because I queen now also. And this is a draw. And king e4 does nothing. I just play king here, king here. That doesn't do anything. King d4 is the same. Just move my king back and forth. Yeah, you have to take en passant. But I like the way he took en passant. Then 5 moves later, he played the only winning move, taking en passant. Have you ever taken en passant twice in a game? The answer is fries. Have you ever taken en passant 5 moves separated? And one of them was the only move that won the game? That's why he's number 4 in the world, and you guys are not number 4 in the world. There's a reason. What about b5? What about b5? What? You mean b6? You can never take on g5. Assuming these pawns aren't here and the king is off the board, you can't win the pawns by force. If you play king here, I play e5. These pawns protect each other. You can never take this pawn. Black just moves the king back and forth, and once you play king f3, I play e5. Well known that these pawns protect each other. Only taking en passant wins. Good try. Trying is the first step to failure. So somebody in either chat, YouTube and Twitch, thought en passant was forced. That if you could legally take en passant, you must. What is this, backgammon or some other game? No. I had a friend of mine a long time ago, and he considered himself expert level at backgammon. Like very good. Good tournament player. Excellent tournament player. And something like the equivalent of 2200, 2250 at chess, he thought was his backgammon strength. And I know a lot of the best backgammon players in the world from 20 years ago, because that's a different time in my life. But anyway, he was playing backgammon, and he got to a position where a backgammon rule that most people don't know comes into effect, and he didn't know the rule, which I thought was funny because he considered himself a very strong player, but didn't know the rules of backgammon. And one of the rules of backgammon is if you roll your dice and you can't play both of them, there's no legal way to do it. But you can play either one. Like you roll 6-4, you can play 4, you can play 6, but you can't play 6-4. There's actually a rule, you have to play the higher one. And he didn't know that rule, even though he thought he was a master backgammon player. Yeah, the truth hurts. Sometimes people aren't as good at stuff as they think they are. Also, none of you know that rule, and none of you know how to play backgammon. But now you know that rule, so that's good. Now you have to learn all the other rules. Do I know Gus Hansen? Yes. Gus Hansen is actually not a terrible chess player. I'm surprised you know Gus Hansen plays backgammon because he's much more known for poker, but he's very good at backgammon. He's not bad at chess. He's better at backgammon and poker than chess, but he's still not a bad chess player. Considering. Also, good tennis player. He's a GOAT backgammon player? He's a good backgammon player. Call him the GOAT. If I have to call somebody the GOAT, which I don't, it's my good friend Falafel. And the only reason is his name's Falafel. Also R.I.P. I hung out with Falafel a lot. He's a very funny guy. He died too young. A mutual friend of ours, Aviv Friedman, said to me, if Falafel has so much money from backgammon, why does he always look like $2? I never heard somebody described as looking like $2, but that does describe Falafel. He may look homeless, he may have been homeless, but at some point he wasn't. Yay, 10 cents. I played Falafel, a US chess rated game. I won with black in like 13 moves. Let's see if I can remember the game. I was black against Falafel in Ann Arbor in a tournament. The game didn't last very long, so I should be able to remember it. I'm not sure if I can. Bishop f3 is a terrible move. Knight f5 question mark. Yeah, this is the game with Falafel. He was about 2100 at chess. And then I took. Now he has to take on f5, and then I take, and I'm indirectly defending my bishop, and I'm up a pawn for nothing. But after knight takes f5, he played bishop takes c5, which is a blunder, and black has one winning move. Who can find it? The answer was I found it. Am I good at backgammon? No. I've also played at the Flint Backgammon Club, and I played at one in Plymouth. And I went to the tournament a couple times in the July 4th weekend they have at the Sheraton. And although the Sheraton might have changed name. In Livonia, Novi? I guess that's Novi. Or is it Northville? Maybe it's Northville. Nobody knows except Mark. Yeah, I knew Peter Jess Thompson and Falafel and some of the guys who play chess or bridge and backgammon. I met, what's his name, a couple times. The guy from the 70s. Paul McGrill. Yeah, he played poker, chess, and backgammon like everybody else I knew. Yeah, it's knight h4. Bam! First played in the game, gotcha versus bitch. And then Falafel resigned, which is correct. Resigning is the only move. There is no other move. That's my one chess game with Falafel that was rated. I played him in some blitz tournaments also. Yeah, he was a very unusual guy. wonder if Elliot Winslow still plays backgammon. He didn't play chess for like 25 years. Now Elliot Winslow plays chess again. Did you ever play Bagel from the movie Diner? What? So Karen's not going to stream tomorrow. I'll be streaming at 6:30, playing viewers as I usually do. Thanks for watching, everybody. We got to figure out somebody to raid. Marbles on stream. What? I can't spell. I might have spelled that right. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow at 6:30. Thanks for